The representative of Hamilton has the floor.
Sorry. Okay. I know I'm late. It's only one day until the election, but it's better late than never. Been a busy boy. I've been at work a lot. Welcome back to yet another Pinky Politics video. Today we're talking about a very important subject, the Ontario 2025 election, which is happening tomorrow. So hopefully you guys have clicked on this video in time and you're ready to make an informed decision. Once again, I've created an easily digestible PowerPoint right here, your guide to the 2025 Ontario election. And here we have the four leaders of the four major parties. Here's how it's gonna work. We'll look at the history of each party leader, who they are and what they've done in the past. We'll look at the platforms of each party to help you make an informed choice at the polls. We'll discuss the record of the current governing party under Doug Ford. And I'll try my best to make the process not just palatable, but fun.
Oh yeah, politics, they're so fun and wacky.
And don't forget, once again, the election is happening Thursday, February 27th. So a good question to ask in the beginning, because it hasn't been 4 years since the last election, why the fuck is this election happening? Well, it's because just about a month ago at the end of January, Doug Ford called an election as sort of a tariff referendum. That's his reasoning, at least. He says he needs a strong mandate for the next 4 years to deal with the Trump tariffs coming in. However, opponents see this election as a power grab by Doug Ford. The PC party's approval rating is high right now, higher than it's been, and they want to secure another 4 more years in power. If you want a more in-depth look as to why this election is happening right now, check out my last video on the Ontario election. It's a good video, highly recommend it. There's also the leaders debate that happened a few weeks ago that you could watch, though I could sum it up pretty easily for you here. The NDP didn't really do or say anything of note. The Liberal leader was very angry most of the time. Doug Ford seemed really complacent and didn't really seem to care. And the Green Party leader was just happy to be there. Mark Schreiner. He's been a very popular leader of the Ontario Green Party, having led the party since 2009. That's like 16 years. They're the furthest left-leaning party in this election. And a summary on what they're focusing on in their policies this time around have to do with housing and the environment. So who is Mike Schreiner? Well, surprisingly enough, he was born in America as an American citizen. He got his education in the US, attending the University of Kansas, and gaining a master's in history from Indiana U. His early career focused on sustainable food production and has spent much of his professional career in the food distribution business. Now, the Green Party has a big policy. In fact, it is the largest policy of all four parties. They have 60 pages, and it covers everything from housing, economic fairness, tackling mental health, care for seniors, equality in Ontario. There's a lot in here. But to summarize, these are their most important points from what I read. They have the largest and most comprehensive plan to build more housing. It covers nearly 10 pages of their book. It's the biggest section. They want to build 2 million homes in urban boundaries over the next 10 years. Importantly, with a mix of unit sizes, not just single-family homes. They want to make the system more fair for first home buyers. 250,000 affordable co-op units. Renew 305,000 community housing units, provide security and support for renters, extend financial support to 300, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot on housing. Seems to be the policy they want to tackle the most. They want to make the richest pay their fair share in taxes. They want to replace the encampments across the province with temporary housing. They want to end subsidies to fossil fuel and oil companies. In general, make Ontario a more green, sustainable place, support local farmers, big focus on mental health care for addicts and all citizens who may need mental health care. And they also seem to have the biggest, most in-depth commitment to truth and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. There's definitely a lot to unpack here in this book. So at the end of the day, why should you vote for the Green Party if you're thinking about it? Well, I would vote for the Green Party if your number one priority is addressing climate change and protecting the environment, if Indigenous rights is a major issue for you, if you want the largest, most impactful housing plan to take in effect, if you dislike the direction and policy of all three of the other parties, and made sure that the Green Party rep in your riding actually has a chance at winning. Even though it is a major party, some people would call the Green Party a fringe party. And depending on your riding, voting for the Greens could just be seen as throwing away your vote. Especially in this election, if you're far left enough to vote for the Green Party, your number one priority in this election is probably getting Doug Ford out. So you might want to vote more strategically in that sense, and vote for the left-leaning candidate that's most likely to win. And of course, when looking at Green Party policy, there is one thing we have to keep in mind, and this is from a quote I recently heard in a YouTube video that I watched that I think speaks to this greatly. The Green Party doesn't expect to govern so they can promise the world. When you're the party that has a 0% chance of leading the province, you could just promise whatever you want. Just say all the things that people want to hear, regardless whether or not you can enact those policies in the real world. So moving on from the Green Party, in third place right now is the New Democratic Party, headed by Marit Stiles. Marit Stiles? I think it's Marit. Hold on. Marit. It's Marit. This is Marit Stiles. She has led the New Democratic Party since 2023 after replacing the former leader, who was also a candidate in my riding, Andrea Horvath, who has gone on to become the mayor of Hamilton. For better or for worse. The NDP political leaning is left, and if I had to summarize the policy that I read, the biggest takeaway would be that they're trying to fight rising costs and inflation. Marit Stiles was born in Newfoundland. She graduated from Carleton University with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. For about a decade, she served as the Toronto District School Board trustee for Toronto's 9th Ward. And as a fun fact, she played in synchronized swimming contests in her youth. So I guess you could say she's good at cooperation and teamwork. So this is the NDP party platform here. It's 22 pages long. So here's the highlights of their 22-page policy plan here. They want to enact a monthly grocery rebate, which is a very interesting way of going about that problem, because I feel like the problem is less about people not having enough money and more about the cost of groceries being so high. You know, why is it that you can go to an American grocery store in Canada and save like 20% on your grocery bill when opposed to shopping at a Canadian store like Loblaws? At the end of the day, I feel like a monthly grocery rebate is just going to put more money in the pockets of those people. It doesn't really address the issue. They've promised all-day two-way GO train expansion everywhere. All-day two-way to Kitchener, Guelph, Brampton, Niagara, London, Bowmanville. A lot of good stuff. I don't like that it doesn't include the Hamilton LRT. Please, I really want a train in my city, please. They've pledged to build 300,000 homes and 60,000 supportive housing units, and to increase funding for education at all levels. They claim they're going to defend jobs against American tariffs with an Ontario Tariff Fund. If you're a business and you're struggling specifically because of the tariffs, you can claim a fund. I don't know how they're going to police that or monitor that, make sure the money's actually going to struggling businesses and not successful ones. They've promised electoral reform. They kind of snuck that into their policy there. Ending first past the post in Ontario. God, I would love that. And they've promised fairer taxes for the working middle class Canadians. Bonus points for having my neighborhood in a picture. So why should you vote for the New Democratic Party? Well, if you want to fight against the rising cost of tariffs using rebates and welfare, then the NDP might be for you. If you want an impactful housing plan that'll really make a dent in the market, they promise more funding for both English and French schooling in Ontario. They seemingly snuck this in the very last sentence of their policy, so I don't know how likely this is going to happen, but it says here, we will freeze income taxes for the 98.2% of Ontarians making under $220,000 a year. And for some left-leaning Ontarians, the Liberal Party is just a little bit too much to the right. So that's the NDP policy. They're promising a lot of good stuff, but if I had to guess, if they were actually elected, I'd say 70% of the policies listed in this platform won't see the light of day. All right, I know you guys are probably getting bored at this point, so I decided I'd put on some satisfying videos for you guys as a little intermission and reward. Oh, look at that. Yes, yes. Let's move on to the Liberal Party here with Bonnie Crombie. She's been the head of the Liberal Party since 2023, just like Stiles. The party political leaning is slightly left of center, and the biggest takeaway from their policies that I saw was ending the healthcare crisis. The Liberals focused a lot more on healthcare than any of the other parties. So Bonnie Crombie was born in Toronto, I believe Etobicoke, to Polish immigrant parents. She graduated from U of T with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and International Relations. House. She's the former mayor of Mississauga for 10 years after taking over after the legendary Hazel McCallion passed away. And an interesting fact I found about her is that she's worked at all levels of government. She started at the federal level representing Mississauga, then to the municipal level where she was mayor, and the provincial level where she is now, the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. Who is this chick on the left here? Does she know she's on the cover of the Liberal policy plan? So one of the biggest takeaways I found from the Liberal Party policy is that they are very anti-Doug Ford. Doug Ford failed at this shit, so here's how we're gonna make it better. They mention his name 17 times. So if you hate Doug Ford, you're just as angry as Bonnie was in that debate, then maybe the Liberal Party is for you. But the biggest focus they seem to have in this document is about healthcare and ending what they call hallway healthcare. Of course, emergency times, wait times are through the roof and have been since COVID. But I also feel like this issue is the most complex and hardest one to solve. You know, it's easy to cut red tape and get more homes built. It really is that easy. It is literally illegal to build dense housing in most places. It is much less straightforward to get highly trained, highly qualified doctors, build more hospitals, increase capacity. Although at the end, when they break down their budget, they do allocate a lot of money to this issue. And if the Liberals were to win this election, I wouldn't be surprised if addressing problems in healthcare are their #1 priority. They want to help businesses in Ontario with a Fight Tariffs Fund. Here in their policy, they say they want to use the tariff fund to give Ontario businesses lower than market interest rates, while the NDP wanted to give businesses relief money. They want to stop provincial corruption. There's been a lot of scandals under Doug Ford. Even saying that is kind of an understatement. But I think every politician who has ever ran for any office on planet Earth has said they wanted to end corruption. They want to cut middle-class income tax by 22%. Remember, the NDP wanted to eliminate it. They want to build more schools, invest in education. And I found when in comparison to the other two left-leaning parties, the Liberal Party had a much more tough-on-crime approach. The type of tough-on-crime approach that you would expect the Conservatives to be championing. While the NDP and the Green Party focus less on arrests and more on rehabilitation. And of course, they want to control and cut what they see as wasteful spending. So why should you vote for the Liberal Party? If you just hate Doug Ford so much, you want to see him lose his majority status, maybe even the whole election. In most ridings, I believe a vote for the Liberals will give you the best chance at doing that. If you believe the NDP is just too far left, or your NDP candidate in your riding has like 0 chance at winning, then the Liberal Party might just be for you. If your #1 priority is not the housing crisis, but instead the healthcare system, and if you're a left-leaning individual who also likes a tough-on-crime approach to politics, and you want taxes cut for small businesses and the middle class, then the Liberals just might have your vote. So before we get into the ruling party, I wanted to address some common agreements that all 3 of the parties that we've looked at have. These are the policies that they all seemingly share and are on pretty even footing with. So for example, making childcare more affordable. That's something all 3 of them can agree on. Giving more money to families with children. All 3 parties want some sort of reform to post-secondary education, like decreasing the cost of post-secondary education, better training for professors, stuff like that. All 3 parties want to lower housing costs and introduce more rent control. If any of these 3 parties win, I can just about guarantee that no new highways are going to be built. And the Ontario Science Centre will not move. It will likely reopen and stay where it is. And of course, all 3 parties do want to invest more into healthcare. I believe the Liberals have the most in-depth plan to address that, but it's still a priority for all 3 parties. So now let's take a look at the party in power, the challenger to beat, Doug Ford of the Progressive Conservative Party. He's been a leader of the party since 2018. He politically leans right. And if I had to summarize his policy, it would be building highways and busting Trump. If you're from Ontario, you probably didn't even need me to tell you that, because Doug Ford has spent hundreds of millions of dollars advertising that to you. So a little bit about Doug Ford. He was born in Toronto before it was Toronto, Etobicoke. He's a college dropout. He dropped out of Humber College and has no post-secondary education. He is the brother of infamous former mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford. And the fun fact that I could muster about Doug Ford is that he has by far the longest Wikipedia article about anybody we're talking about about today. I'll give you an example. Here's Bonnie Crombie's Wikipedia, you know, very accomplished Canadian politician. Worked at all 3 levels of government, mayor of Mississauga, and that's it. It's just this blip up here and then voting records at the bottom. And then Doug Ford is like, holy shit tamale. There's a lot here. I mean, look how long the sources page is. Oh my God. So, what's the policy of the Progressive Conservative Party? I feel like this one can be summarized in 2 words. Protect Ontario. This was actually a blank slide before because the PC party, the party in charge that called this election, didn't have a policy platform until yesterday. Like, as I was making this PowerPoint, they just released their policy platform 3 days before the election. All the other platforms have been out for weeks. So I was going to make a joke by having the blank page and be like, oh, where's the policy? But with 3 days left, they have actually made it. Here it is. Protect Ontario. And the pages actually make noise when you flip them. Wonder how much that took out of the budget. So their policy simplified is that they want to grow and protect Ontario jobs in the face of Trump's threats. He wants to make a $5 billion investment to major industries, $10 billion in immediate cash flow support for Ontario job creators through a 6-month deferral of provincial business taxes. So major cuts in taxes for businesses. He wants to fight gridlock by creating more gridlock. Doug. At least he mentions the Hamilton LRT. This is the only policy proposal that has mentioned the Hamilton LRT. Now here's a part I really don't like. Return sanity to bike lanes. By removing them from the busiest streets in the province, starting with Bloor Street West, Yonge Street, and University Avenue in Toronto, and replacing them on secondary roads. Like, does he not realize people are just gonna bike on the main roads anyway, like they always do? Instead of giving bikes their own dedicated lane on major roads, the bikes are just gonna be in the roads with the cars. It's gonna make traffic worse, just you wait. So what a strong majority of his policy consists of is how he's gonna deal with the Trump tariffs moving forward. I mean, heck, it's from his reasoning why this election is happening in the first place, for him to receive a strong mandate to deal with the Trump tariffs. Attach every person in Ontario to family doctor. Well, the problem with the lack of family doctors happened under Doug Ford, so we'll see about that. So a lot of this policy I feel like you could take with a grain of salt, because this party has been in charge for 2 terms now, so you could very easily ask the question, why haven't you done this already? Why are you only addressing this problem with family doctors now, when an election is happening and not, oh, I don't know, the 7 years you were in charge of this province? It really does seem like Doug Ford found a new thing to campaign on and distract people with, the tariffs. And he's using that to try and win this election and trying to get Ontario to ignore his abysmal record as leader. So in the past 7 years, the Progressive Conservatives have been in charge. Average home prices have gone up $300,000. The Ontario Science Centre has permanently closed down, along with Ontario Place, which has been demolished to make way for a private spa, paid for and subsidized by the province. There is, of course, the Greenbelt scandal, which Doug Ford is very desperately trying to distance himself away from. He did publicly apologize for it at the last debate, which honestly I was not expecting. But the fact of the matter is he is still under investigation by the RCMP for this. He's increased the GDP of Ontario by $300 billion, which is like 25% more than when he came into office. So a substantial amount of GDP growth. He ended license plate renewal fees, and just in general has removed a lot of bureaucracy like that. He's been publicly very anti-Trump.
Was I happy this guy won? 100% I was.
Standing up for Ontario against these harsh tariffs. But at the same time, and I feel like a lot of Canadians don't know this, he has been spending like tens of millions of dollars in our taxpayer money to buy advertisements on Fox News, including during the Super Bowl this year, promoting Ontario as a great place to conduct trade, which to me makes me very uncomfortable. Not only do I not want my tax dollars going towards Fox fucking News, but also like, what is this gonna do? You think people watching the extremely anti-Canadian Fox News are gonna watch an ad about Ontario and be convinced to change their ways? It's so stupid and such a waste of money. I just really wanted to throw that out there because it bothers me. And finally, this point on the bottom here, he made a new logo for Ontario. And I have to admit, I kind of like it. Okay, he said like 7 years ago that the old logo looked like 3 people chilling in a hot tub, and I could not unsee it. Doug Ford ruins everything. So why should you vote for the Progressive Conservative Party? Well, simply put, if you like the status quo, if you like what Doug Ford is doing and has done and you want that to continue, if you want more highways to be built and for traffic to increase due to the laws of induced demand, if you want home prices to stay the same, if you hate bike lanes and you'd rather have those bikes in a car lane, if you can turn a blind eye to or just easily ignore all of the scandals of the past 7 years, and of course, if you really do want Ontario Place to be turned into a private spa, then the PCs got your vote. So that is the summary of the 4 parties and their policies. So on a personal level, Doug Ford is very much against my self-interest, especially when it comes to cycling, because I save a lot of money not owning a car and using a bike instead. So getting rid of bike lanes on major roads and making it more unsafe for me to commute around, like we're talking about my personal safety here and the risk of me dying on the road. Out of all the elections I've been eligible to vote in, this one is like by far the worst. But at the end of the day, make sure you vote. For the love of God, even if like there's problems like you haven't gotten your card in the mail or whatever, just go to the polls and talk to the people there. I didn't get my voter card. My voter card got sent to the place I used to live, and I was still registered in a riding I no longer lived in. I just went to the polls, I talked to the ladies there, and I voted for a candidate in the riding I actually live in. I don't care who you're voting for, just as long as you vote. The last provincial election had the lowest voter turnout in the history of Ontario at 44%. Less than half of eligible voters in this province actually voted in the last election. I hope that you find yourself just a bit more informed when you make your choice when you go to the polls, and you vote for the party that's best aligned with your views. Thanks again. Have a good night.